This podcast has been made possible by Ledge.
Hi, everybody. This is David Barnes, CFO of Trimble, and you are listening to the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 920.
We will be at a point in the next 12 months that Sensei needs to go out and raise additional capital to get the program into bigger phase 3 and beyond trials. And so figuring out how to stand out among a lot of little biotechs out there and how to get people's attention and interest and make sure we're delivering the data we get from our early trials in a really, really thoughtful and comprehensive way so that we can raise that money efficiently and effectively.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with Erin, Colgan, CFO of Sensei Bio. For many of us, the period stretching roughly from March 2020 to December 2022 will be forever known simply as COVID. As denoted by the sentence, I changed jobs during COVID. And so it was for Erin Colgan, who in July of 2020, after investing 9 years with pharma giant Vertex Pharmaceuticals and 8 years with PwC, opted to become employee number 20 of a promising biotech startup. Still, Colgan's career move was not driven by the allure of startup dreams, but what recruiters often refer to as a call to leadership. You'll hear that story and much more on today's episode. We'll begin after this. Does your finance team struggle with routine tasks like reconciliation and manually managing multiple bank accounts? Many tech companies today have complex finance operations and massive amounts of data in different disconnected silos. Whether you're reconciling across 6 different payment processors, or between NetSuite and the bank, closing the books can be a nightmare. Ledge has found a better way. Ledge is a finance operations platform that connects all your banking, payment, and accounting systems into one unified platform. Ledge automates revenue reconciliation across all systems, right down to the transaction level, and instantly matches payments, invoices, refunds, chargebacks, or any other transaction. Ledge gives you real-time visibility into your cash position across all accounts and alerts you about issues and at-risk funds in real time so you can act in real time. And get this, Ledge requires no engineering resources. Ledge plugs right into your existing stack so you can get set up instantly. Ledge puts finance teams back in control. Learn more at ledge.co. Hello, we're speaking with Erin Colgan, CFO of Sensei Bio. Erin, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So, Erin, as always, we like to ask our guests to look back at the start of each episode and try to identify those experiences that they feel prepared them to become a finance leader. What would come to mind for you?
Yeah, I think I would say 3 things. I began my career in the Boston office of PwC. We were still PricewaterhouseCoopers at the time. And I started in what I would call healthcare, but not biotech. So really actually more hospitals, payers. I audited a company who had dental clinics across the country. I think what I took from that, which I feel is really important and I use to this day, is you really learn to juggle a lot very quickly. You learn to prioritize. You have multiple bosses. You have multiple clients. You have people asking a lot of you at the same time. And it really requires you to get all your ducks in a row pretty quickly and really learn how to be super, super organized so that you don't have to work 95 hours a week, only 70, as most people, I'm sure, who started their career there would tell you. And I think that really set me up for being able to take on the roles I did after that. The second thing I would say is when I was with Vertex, I spent some time abroad in Europe, and that was a really unique experience and really allowed me to see how teams in other countries operate differently. Their perspective on work life and their perspective on business. And
Tell us something about Vertex. I'm sorry. I know it's pharmaceuticals. And again, it's after your PwC chapter.
yes.
Can you tell us what you were looking for when you saw Vertex as an opportunity?
Sure. To be totally candid, I kind of fell into biotech pharmaceuticals as an industry. I had a client when I was with PwC, and he had gone to Vertex about a year and a half before I joined, and really just reached out and said, "Are you looking?" And I said, "I'm not sure." And he said, "Come meet with me, come meet the team." And I think what I realized then, and why I would probably say I would stick in this industry forever, is I am not science minded. I am not good with biology or chemistry. I'm very squeamish. And so it really enlightened me to understand how I could take a skill set I had and help people, help patients, and help drive a company forward that was really doing something I felt was meaningful. So when I joined Vertex, they were actually a hepatitis C company, or about to be. And they went through quite a transition in my first few years. So they went from being a hepatitis C company to being a cystic fibrosis company, which is still really what they're known for today. And it was that cystic fibrosis program that launched internationally that brought me over to Europe to help them grow that business across an ex-US market.
And I want to just point out, you spent 9 years with Vertex, and you were in a variety of roles. And as you just shared with us, you lived abroad for a spell. And you also invested at Pricewaterhouse. You invested 7 years, which is something we see. So you're someone who sticks with a company and
Yes.
grows with the company. At PwC, you were an auditor, but you also had a business development role for a while as well, which is kind of interesting. What was the nature of that?
I had a partner come to me and say, "I think you could be really good at this." And so I joined that team. I realized it was a lot of writing audit proposals, and I will admit numbers are more my forte. So after about a year, I started helping the market leader to do a lot of projections and forecasting for the Northeast market. And he said to me at one point, about a year in, "You want to be an accountant, right?" And I was like, "I do, yes."
So when you do go to Vertex, though, you had a variety of different roles. I know you
Mhm.
were a director of reporting, and you went into a number of senior roles. There must have been recruiters calling. There must have been someone who was trying to get you to leave before, 9 years.
Yep.
But you stayed. What does that tell us about you?
I like to see things through. I am very excited by a company when it's in growth mode. And to be totally honest, in that situation, the team I worked with and had around me, I really, really, really enjoyed. And I couldn't have imagined leaving the people in part.
When you do leave, what are you looking for exactly? And biotech startups, are they on the radar yet, or?
No, not really. What I left for at the time and went to Intarsia for was the last couple of years I spent at Vertex was very focused on the commercial side of the business and revenue forecasting. And I I loved that work, but the sales for a cystic fibrosis product in the US were actually very uncomplicated compared to most marketed drugs, especially in the US market. And so I was looking for something a little more complex. That brought me to Intarsia Therapeutics, which at the time was trying to get an approval from the FDA for a drug device combo for type 2 diabetes. And it was about the most complex payer market you could possibly get into. And that was really the appeal for me.
And you're in a senior finance role there. Is there a CFO who you're reporting to, or what was the placement?
There is, and it's actually somebody who was on the team that I loved so much at Vertex back before he left. So, yeah, I followed someone there.
But you're not there all that long. You do, and it's not long before you're stepping into a CFO role. Can you tell us what unfolds really for you? And curious when you started thinking, I'd like to be a CFO. It must have happened somewhere when you're leaving Vertex and you started looking at opportunities, realizing that you'd be in that upper crust of finance leadership. Why
Yeah.
not the CFO?
Yeah, I think I actually for a long time think that had been a career goal for me. Vertex was just very big, and I mean, I was climbing the ladder, but in a company that size, I was a long way from that role. I think what happened in Intarsia is what kind of opened my eyes to wanting to come to something smaller. Unfortunately, instead of the FDA granting approval, they rejected that product at Intarsia, and that's kind of where things started to unfold. Hence, you made the point. I'm a longevity person, and I had no plans to only be there for about a year. But what it did do is introduce me to a company that was a lot smaller. When I left Vertex, they were well over 2,000 employees. Intarsia was only a couple hundred. And so it reminded me that I really, really liked being at a small place that lets you get far more involved in a lot more at the same
Yeah.
time. And I realized taking a step to something really small would really let me, get into everything from bottom to top.
Is there a recruiter that you're working with at that place in time, or was it your network, or how do you?
No, it was actually a recruiter who introduced me to the team here. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us something about that. I mean, to make that step is a huge step, and I'm just curious as to whether the recruiter said, "Okay, are you ready for this? We think you are. Are you?" And I mean, is it something that you had to just shut yourself away and adopt a new mindset in some way? I am ready to enter the C-suite.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I looked at a couple different roles, one that would have this opportunity, one that wouldn't have been as senior, and with a company that was more wholly owned by a giant behemoth where I probably would never have had the influence that I've been able to have here. But I think, in my career, I multiple times have stepped into roles that I was taking on something brand new and something I hadn't done before, being in Europe and doing international accounting and learning the nuances of 20 different countries' rules was all new to me as well. And I've found, you kind of have to say yes and you figure it out. And so far, knock on wood, I've been successful in figuring out all those maybe not super qualified for roles I've stepped into.
And we want to find out more about Sensei Bio, but just curious, when you do step into the organization, you're right below the CFO. You're a senior vice president. I should point out it's COVID's landed. It's July of 2020. A lot of job changes happened that year for whatever reason. But for you, it's kind of an uncertain environment. Within a year or two, you're entering the CFO office.
Yep.
Was that the trajectory you expected? Was that it was expected within a short window like that?
It was. There actually was not a CFO here when I
Oh.
joined. I was employee number 20 at the time, and there wasn't a CFO. So I came in, I was the lead senior finance person. I think it, just took a little, it was a private company when I joined. We were about to go public. And I think it was really getting through that proved to our board that I was ready to fully take that title on.
And that's really what it's about. You had to build a relationship with the CEO and the board, and
Yeah,
achieve that confidence that over that period of time. So you were
absolutely.
battle tested. Um,
Yes.
so let's find out about this opportunity then. Again, Sensei Bio. What is this company about? What does it do? What are its offerings?
Yeah, so we're a small biotech company, newly clinical stage. We just started back in the clinic in May of this year. And we are an oncology, specifically an immuno-oncology company. For many people listening, a product like Keytruda may ring a bell. There are several blockbuster immuno-oncology drugs on the market. However, they actually tend to have a pretty low efficacy rate. Far less than 50% of patients that are treated with those products see long-term benefit. And so really what Sensei's after is how to help the vast majority of patients see additional or some clinical benefit from a product. We're doing that by kind of taking advantage of a specific set of qualities that exist within a tumor as opposed to in the regular immune system. And, if we're successful, it could be a real game changer for those patients who don't have anything on the market that works for them right now.
So Curious, could you provide us maybe with a abbreviated history of the company's capital structure? I think it's had a few rounds of financing, but what would you share with us?
Yeah. So when I joined, the company was still private. It had been in existence for quite some time, but really small, kind of started by the previous CEO, almost as maybe what I'd call a pet project at some point in time. And after I came on, we finished doing a round of funding that was much larger than any round they had done. And very quickly, I joined, and about 6 weeks later, we had some meetings with banks to talk about how we were going to go public and take advantage of, the market was hot at the time, especially for biotechs. And so we wanted to capitalize on that. And within a couple months, we did a crossover round, and then we took the company public. We raised $152 million going public in February of 2021.
February 2021. So wow. And to be honest, are you CFO yet?
No, not yet.
Tell us something about that. I mean, was it road shows? It was during COVID again, still, so it's kind of a strange.
It was during like the peak.
Yeah. So how was that experience perhaps different than it would have been for you? What would you share with us?
Yeah, well, everything from the fact that I had only met my CEO in person like twice in the first 6 months. And we did the roadshow. We did everything. I had never met the audit team. I had never met our lawyers in person. I had never met any of our bankers in person. And we did the entire roadshow virtual. The only great thing I would say about that is, we're back to live meetings now, and you can do a virtual roadshow really, really efficiently because you can pack your day. You're not walking, flying, driving, traveling. Ours was short, and we were able to really squeeze a lot in, and we were very oversubscribed on the IPO, I think in no small part because we were able to talk to a lot of people in a very small window of time.
And where was the company along its revenue journey at that place in time? Was there a revenue stream yet? Or?
No, we were. So at the time, we actually had a product that was in phase two trials. And about 6 months after our IPO, we got a data readout that really wasn't showing us what we wanted to see out of that product. It's not a low bar when it comes to cancer and oncology. You really need to be far and away better than current offerings, and we weren't seeing that. So at that point, we had to make a decision to really pivot from that product to what is right now our lead product. But even at early phase two, we were years away from revenue generating for sure.
Was always curious about when companies are pre-revenue and are taken public. I think biotech, it happens in this sector more than others, perhaps. That's accurate? Correct? Correct me if you feel otherwise. And COVID was sort of a special time in biotech. Um, it, some of the special challenges that come with taking a pre-revenue company public. Can you reflect a little on those challenges for us?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think in this sector specifically, I would say that has ebbed and flowed over time. If I look back, Vertex went public. They had been public for many years when I joined, and that was mostly pre-revenue, short of some kind of royalty or collaboration revenue. I think for a period of time, no one was going public unless you were essentially, at phase three and probably not commercial, but about to be commercial. And I do think that there was just a real boom in the sector. I think COVID made pharma biotech bells of
Yeah.
the ball a little bit, right? They were the heroes that saved the day. And it really drove a lot of interest into the sector. And I think it made people realize they could bring a lot of these companies public and get them really good big rounds of funding through that earlier. Now, I think a lot went public at
Yeah.
the same time. And one of the things I'm proud of is we pretty quickly realized how long that cash was going to need to last. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the to the later sections.
And I have to believe the pivot that you mentioned, you kind of earned your stripes there as far as educating the hard questions with the analyst, everything that needed to be explained in minute detail.
Yep.
You were sort of on the front lines at that place and time.
Yep.
Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Any takeaways for our listeners as to communication best practices under those types of circumstances?
Yeah, I think it's being forthcoming, but it's also making sure you instill confidence in what's next. And I've seen a lot of places pivot and pivot much more dramatically. We stayed an oncology company, we stayed an immuno-oncology company, so we certainly pivoted in the asset that was going to be the lead.
Yeah.
But we didn't. Like I said, when I joined Vertex, it was a hepatitis C company. Then it became a cystic fibrosis company. If you look back at the early days of Regeneron, they weren't Eylea. And so, I think a lot of places have had to pivot, and you just need to make sure people realize that the team understands why they made the decision. The decision is actually helpful to the future of the company. I mean, we probably could have kept chugging. You and I probably wouldn't be having this conversation today, though.
Well, thank you for that. We want to jump to our finance strategic moment question. And what we're looking for is just a story or a moment of insight that you've experienced along the way in your career that revealed to you how finance plays a strategic role. What would you share with us?
Yeah, I think I would say it's, about 6 months post our IPO, we had some data on a phase 2 program that wasn't what we hoped it would be. And at that point, we really needed to huddle and decide where was the company going to go. We had a lot of money we had raised from the IPO, but the downturn or the sourness toward the biotech market had started. And I think what's really important, and for me, what I really pushed for was some people were saying, hey, this could last 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. I felt like let's pretend it's going to last a lot longer than that and see how long we can make this cash last us while still doing what we feel is most important to the company. And what is that? And how do we get that done? And what resources do we need to get that done? And thank God we did that, because especially for small cap biotech, people still aren't, rushing to fund things, and money's not coming in like it was when we went public. And so we've been very fortunate. We extended our cash runway by about 1.5 years when we sat down and made that very important prioritization decision. And I think what was really instrumental during that was how finance and the science and medical parts of the organization were going to feel like they were working together and not against each other. Because, long term, that's not sustainable. We need everybody to understand why we're making a decision. And it's hard to explain to people like, well, we have 2 years of cash. Why do we have to stop doing things now? Like, yes, I get that. It doesn't feel like a today thing, and it really isn't. But, if we don't extend this cash runway by quite a bit, it will become a problem. And you can't make that decision later. You have to make that decision early and often and continue to revisit it as you're learning new things and seeing new data and continuing to see where the market's headed. And so, I think that's really where I felt like, okay, I have to step in and take the lead, and maybe it won't be the most popular, but I need to make sure everybody's kind of with us and understanding this decision and feels like they're part of it and not just being told.
From episode 796, this is 1 Minute with CFO Elaine Sun of Mammoth Biosciences.
Gene editing, CRISPR gene editing, is this next frontier. Again, as someone who's been in the life sciences industry for a long time and seen technology sort of wax and wane, I think this is very exciting in enabling potentially, on the therapeutic side, potentially curative therapies. And also on the diagnostic side, potentially, our vision is potentially to leverage CRISPR enzymes to be able to develop next generation diagnostics with the potential accuracy of a molecular diagnostic, but in the power of your hand, at the point of care, or potentially, even ultimately in the home.
we're going to move to our mentoring round, where we'll ask you several quick questions intended to inform and inspire future finance leaders. And this goes back to, we might have touched on this a little bit, but when you become CFO at Sensei, that first 30 days, you'd been through so much already, as we've been discussing here. What maybe surprised you ultimately as you get the role?
Yeah, I think to your point, by the time that happened, I don't think much changed. You know, I had really been doing the role for quite some time. So I don't think I would say those 30 days was all that different from the 30 days before that. But I do think, one of the important things it did is it put me more front and center as a contact for the business. And it really started putting me in the spotlight when it came to talking to investors, when it came to talking to bankers. I really started to take over and own those relationships versus my CEO and I kind of tag teaming those always.
We always like to ask our guests to reflect a little bit on the personal side for us. We're wondering if you have a personal habit or part of a routine that you're known for, something you've done over time, something you just do a little differently perhaps than the rest. Anything come to mind?
Yes, and I'm sure some do this, but I'm just an incredibly organized person. I'm the queen of lists. And I've been known to write down something I just did so I can cross it off because it makes me feel very accomplished for the day. As you move up in your career, as I'm sure everybody realizes, your list almost never gets accomplished. So you just rewrite your list over and over and move something forward and forward. But I think I would say that people know I'm incredibly organized. I never forget something I asked you to do. And I think people are always shocked to realize, like, I asked you 3 weeks ago and I haven't asked again, and I maybe didn't write it down and maybe I won't ask, but I will. I never forget, much to my husband's dismay. And yeah, I think the other thing people might be surprised by is I am very chatty, very outgoing. I'm probably actually a little more shy and self-conscious than anybody who kind of meets me at first glance would guess.
Would you, is there a book or something you influenced your thinking along the way, or maybe you just have a book you'd like to escape with? Don't know. Any book recommendation for us?
Yeah, what's funny is I listened to it actually right after COVID ended during my commute. I'm a big Audible fan. And I listened to 54 Hours of Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. And I actually I feel like it should be adult reading homework, especially in this day and age. I feel like it was packed with so many lessons of business and life and personality. But yeah, I found that to be just a really good one and very applicable to the now.
Interesting. We've had it before, but infrequently. Atlas Shrugs. Okay. Well, we're up to our final question, and now we'd like to have you look forward for the coming 12 months. And what we're interested in, your priorities as a CFO for that period. What are your priorities?
Yeah, my priorities are making sure that we remain financially really diligent to get this clinical asset as far along in its progress as we can. And we will be at a point in the next 12 months that Sensei needs to go out and raise additional capital to get the program into bigger phase 3 and beyond trials. And so, figuring out how to stand out among a lot of little biotechs out there and how to get people's attention and interest and make sure we're delivering the data we get from our early trials in a really, really thoughtful and comprehensive way so that we can raise that money efficiently and effectively.
Erin Colgan, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you for having me.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. As you have perhaps already heard or even seen, we're now featuring the career lessons and moments of strategic insight shared by our CFO guests as Thought Leader videos. You can now find these videos on our blog at cfothoughtleader.com and, of course, our newsletters, but also on LinkedIn. If you haven't already, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader LinkedIn company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the #1 thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.